The Marshall Space Flight Center is known as a propulsion center, but it also has made many contributions in science. We're here to talk with a man who has spent 30 years here in science, Dr. Don Frazier. Thanks very much for taking the time, sir, to talk to us today.
Thank you.
Let's start back when you were a small boy growing up in Detroit. How did you discover that you wanted to become involved in science?
If I saw a picture of someone from NASA, I had utmost respect for that person because that was one of the people that John Glenn and others like him depended on. And I said, this has got to be a first-rate organization. And so I wanted to be a part of it. One of the things that I think we've contributed here from NASA is the ability to grow really good crystals. Some of these crystals are important in such things as infrared detectors, for example. You want a certain degree of perfection. I mentioned earlier the possibility of nonlinear optics as a futuristic way of doing computing, for example. We have demonstrated that in the past. Protein crystal growth, that was a biggie back in the microgravity days, where if you can grow a perfect crystal of protein, you can do X-ray diffraction on that perfect crystal, and sometimes you can do some pharmaceutical type. How does aspirin work, for example? And so that was a biggie. Protein crystal growth, that was a big deal back during the microgravity days. There was a lot of accomplishment there. Larry DeLucas down at UAB did quite a bit of work in that area, and others, not just him. The production of certain types of aerogels, for example, in microgravity, or zeolites. People have used it for purification of atmosphere. I'm talking about microgravity related things, but there are other things that are non-microgravity related that NASA, of course, from the propulsion standpoint, have been very instrumental in developing. NASA is not just this side of there's also the telescopes, there's the optics, there's Chandra, there's our ability to look out at the edge of the universe, near the edge of the universe, back in time, near the creation, We've done so many things, it's difficult to compare what's more important than others. We're getting more into earth sciences, where we're looking at moving detectors on moving platforms and determining melting of ice, how fast that rate is. I mean, this has a lot to do with our current focus on climate control and climate conditions and that sort of thing. So all of these things are probably not comparable to each other, but all are extremely important, if not to our existence, certainly to our knowledge of the universe that we live in. Computing, optical computing, and quantum computing, and these sort of things that NASA is playing a role in helping to develop flexible electronics. The fact that now we'll be able to print circuits and photovoltaics on paper, and very light, low mass. NASA is very interested in low mass and high efficiency devices. We can print a way of collecting energy from the sun and storing it, and printing the storage medium, and printing light emitting diodes on a piece of paper, which is what we're working on now. This is some of the stuff I'm working on right now. That's going to have a huge impact on my own personal view and the nation.
Dr. Frazier, thanks very much for your time today.
Well, I thank you for taking the time with me. This has been nice to talk about. It's not just work anymore. It's fun.
Bonnie, it was so gracious of you to have us in your home today. Can you tell us what it was like, first of all, working at Redstone, and then tell me what the first meeting was like?
Well, he was so friendly, so cordial. He was just, I felt like I had known him. He was a very nice man.
You really became his right-hand lady, right?
Well, a lot of people called me that. He called me the lady I worked for.
What was your role?
What was my role? Well, secretary, flunky, whatever. There were so many things to do, and he was a very busy man, of course, and was in conferences all day. I would have, by the time he'd come from the meeting, I'd have his briefcase packed with reading material, and then we would go through the stack on his desk. I had it prioritized, and He always took his briefcase home with him, and the next morning when he came in, he would turn it upside down, dump it on my desk, and say, "I did my homework." He was kind of the absent-minded professor. He would leave his umbrellas, or he usually carried his pillow with him on every trip, because he had to have, he said he couldn't sleep without his pillow. And he'd leave it at the hotels. I'd have to find somebody who was on travel in Washington or wherever he had been to go get his pillow and bring it when they come back to Marshall.
So he decides to switch you from the Army, or move everyone from the Army to NASA, and President Eisenhower comes to Marshall. Tell me about that. You got to escort him, right?
Yes, I did. They had an outdoor stage, and I got to escort President Eisenhower to the stage. Dr. Von Braun escorted Mrs. Marshall, and that's when he named us officially the George C. Marshall Space Flight Center, which now just goes by Marshall Space Flight Center, but it was in honor of the late General George C. Marshall.
So what did he say to you once his rocket made it to the moon?
Well, he went from the Cape to Houston to Mission Control, of course, to watch the mission, and he stayed through the lunar landing, and so I didn't see him or talk to him during that period until he got back to the office, and he came in with a big grin on his face and said, "Mission accomplished." Went straight to his desk then.
Back to work.
Back to work, because his desk was full, covered.
Bonnie, it was so sweet of you to let us come see you today. We are so appreciative. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Lori, it was really exciting to meet so many people instrumental to the success of this center.
Very humbling and inspiring, a great group of people, and a great day here at Marshall. Join us next time as we focus on Marshall.